Reforge Gaming video, a weekly episode where I like to sit down with my man Mike, 30 and Still Gaming. Be sure to check out his channel, 30NSG. It's linked below in the description. I wanted to talk about just the drama with trying to cover the Xbox Activision deal. I was on a podcast this week, BRAP, Basement Radio Arcade Podcast. Be sure to check out that YouTube channel as well if you want to see that episode. And there's so much drama surrounding this. Everybody seems exhausted with covering it. It doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. I even covered Google potentially getting ready to jump in the ring. So I'm going to end the previous stream and bring everybody over with redirect. If redirect fails, then just use the link in the chat or that featured video. And do make sure, as all of you come over, hitting the like button helps this video find more people. So give it a smash, because a bunch of you are going to be in here, and we need those first 100 likes really quickly. So, Mike, before I get into why we think there's just so much drama and why we just think so many people get personal about this, I just kind of want to know what you think about the deal. Where do you stand? Do you want it to go through? Do you think it's going to go through? You know, give me your flyover of the Xbox Activision deal, because everybody's got a version of their take and their side on where this is going and whether or not it should go through.
So the drama is there, and I haven't been covering it myself because there's just so much, and I'm just like, I don't feel like putting the effort into all the documents. There's yourself, Destin has been doing a really good job covering this. Lots of lawyers channels have been covering this, so I've been watching it through you all. I stopped covering it. We'll talk about it a little bit on the podcast and stuff, but I'm not going all in on the content for it. As far as, do I want it to happen? I mean, I thought it was going to happen. I still think I believe it's going to go through. Do I think it's good for the industry? I don't. But if it's not them, then who? You know, it's going to happen. It's going to go to, let's say Microsoft was out. They're like, nope, sorry, Microsoft, you can't have the deal. And they're like, okay, great. Amazon's like, we'll take it. Or Google comes in and says, we'll take it. Or Apple comes in and says, we'll take it. Whatever. Some conglomerate company, $1 trillion company is going to come in, or a private company or a private investor, one of the Arabian princes it's been going on a spending spree on purchasing or was rumored of buying WWE. You know what I mean? Like, they have tons of money and people want to buy stuff up. So why not? So they're not stopping the deal. They might stop Microsoft if it doesn't go through, which I don't think they're stopping them. I think it is going through. But if they stop them, someone else is going to buy them. So it's just like, what are you going to do, right? So as far as is it good for consumers? I don't believe it's good for consumers. I like competition. I don't have a flag in a plastic box, right? I love games. I'll play them on Nintendo. I'll play it on PlayStation. I'll play it on Xbox. I'll play it on PC. New system comes out and it's good, except Stadia. I'll play it, right? Like, I'll try it anywhere. I'll play it anywhere. I'll do the live stream, whatever they put out there. I'll give it a shot. I don't care about putting my flag in, I'm a Sony boy. I'm a Xbox guy. I play Xbox because I have an 8-year-old, and when I buy one game, he can play it as well on his Xbox because it's shared. If I'm on PlayStation, I got to buy 2 PlayStations. You know what I mean? It's like, I already had the Xboxes. It's cheaper. I don't have to buy him a $500 console. It's right. So there's another entry point there. But as overall for the business, I don't want to say it's bad for consumers because it's not upfront. It's not bad for consumers. But when you start looking at stuff like the film industry and how Netflix came in and took, before everyone had their own streaming platforms, Netflix was like, hey, we have a streaming platform. Everyone's like, yeah, you could show our stuff, and you could show our stuff. And then it all went through, and then everyone else now has their own service. And when one person can control everything, and I know we don't look at it that way right now, but 10 years from now, like, maybe there is no hard consoles anymore. Maybe everything is only streaming. And the landscape looks like Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, right? Let's just say Apple throws their hat in the ring because they're already on mobile, right? So they're already video games. So let's say there's these three big companies now in place, or Sony's gone and Google's not a thing in that part of the industry. Who knows, right? And they're changing the way that we're looking at, and they're it's the gold rush basically, right? Microsoft's going out and buying all the land of the cloud service industry, and they're going to maintain everything and then parcel it out to other people, but they have to go through them to buy that land. You know what I mean? So
Right.
overall, I think it's interesting. Obviously, it's fascinating how this whole process is going through and what the landscape. I'm excited to see what it does. Sort of like everyone was excited when Disney bought Marvel and Star Wars, and look how that turned out. So we'll see what happens with Microsoft.
Yeah, just so we're clear, guys, he wasn't saying that on PlayStation there's no game share, because I have 2 PlayStations. He was saying he already had the Xboxes, so he didn't have to buy any new hardware in order to buy the game one time. That he wasn't saying that that PlayStation doesn't have
Correct.
Game share. He went really quickly, so you might not have caught that. As far as, because chat's not happy with you saying Destin has had good coverage, because I don't agree. I don't think he's had good coverage, but judging,
no, hold on a second. He's had coverage when bringing people on like Michael Packner and Hogue Law and stuff like that to talk about it. Where right, they're from the lawyer perspective and from that part of the industry and getting their feedback. That's good information, right? That's not. I'm not saying Destin himself, because he's more of an Xbox fanboy, let's be honest, right? But the people that he brought on to talk about the stuff has given you more knowledge about the stuff.
Okay, well, yeah, and that's fair pushback to chat, because chat's like going off on a tear. Because I do think in my estimation, in the clips that I've seen, the bias is pretty strong there. And
sure.
I've always maintained that everybody has a bias. The question is not who doesn't have a bias. That's a silly question. The question is, right, who's allowing their bias to either override or direct coverage more. Like, I think it has a greater impact on certain outlets and certain coverage, because basically what I've been trying to do is, okay, I'm just going to give you the documents. I'm just going to give you the facts. I'm going to give you my opinion on them, but I'm going to try to keep those things in separate categories, so here's Lono reading a document. Now here's Lono giving us his thoughts and his conclusions, instead of sort of those two things getting like blended together in a blender. So you're not really sure, like, am I getting good representation or information here? So whether or not, people get their information from source A, B, or C, I have found, if you zoom out on that, I have found the choose a side and cheer for the side no matter what angle to just be weird. It's weird.
It is weird.
It's weird to me. Because just today, the show that I did before this was about Google Cloud is claiming that Microsoft Cloud is being anti-competitive, antitrust within European markets. And I was just trying to show people, like, this is what Microsoft's doing. They're not just being like, hey, poor old Xbox needs a chance here. They're attempting to leverage cloud and their software and get this footprint and this control and to limit choice. And I can't see them not applying that same strategy to gaming. And that's kind of all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to draw people's attention to that. And it still just immediately turns into like this tribalistic thing. And it's like, I've continued to say that I think people don't see the companies behind unless it's the company they don't like. Like, people will talk about Sony and Jim Ryan, it's like, instead of talking about PlayStation. But when it comes to Xbox, they won't look at Microsoft. It's like,
no.
Look at Microsoft. Look how big they are. Look at what they've done. Look at how they've established market dominance. Look at how they were, they're willing to pay antitrust fees, and look at how they're willing to treat employees, and they've been sued. And you have to look at that. You have to zoom out on that, I think, if you're going to make a consumer level judgment on this situation. And in the coverage of it, something that I've noticed is people are tired of covering it.
Yeah, it's a long process. That's why being a lawyer and you're in the courtroom doing all this stuff for months. It's not like show up one day and they're like, guilty, not guilty, or you got it, go ahead, take it away. No, it's this long process of drawing out these paperworks and looking at the dots and the commas and what they say and the particular words they're using, and it's a lot of stuff.
And the only way I've been able to sort of start to stomach the conversation is I've had to get rid of the bad actors, because I do feel like there's a lot of people who enter this debate and they're not even really looking to kind of have a conversation. They're just looking to kind of like hurl insults, and they want to call, everybody either a Sony pony or an Xbot.
Right.
In your experience in gaming coverage and gaming, streaming and all of this, I have found this to be a heightened level of the console war. I don't actually think in all the years I've done this, because I remember back in the day covering E3, I remember defending Xbox and saying, oh, I thought that was a good showcase. I thought they did a good job. I remember in 2017, I said, I think Microsoft's trying to blur the line between PC and console. And here we sit, like that's their entire goal, right, is to really stress ecosystem. But even back then, it was a little more low key. How have you been experiencing this console war right now? Where do you think it's heightened, or was I just not paying attention back then?
No, I think it's the same. I really do. I don't think ever since there's been a PlayStation and Xbox, there's always been people, because it's like the Coke and Pepsi thing, right? Coke is PlayStation at this point, and Pepsi is Microsoft. It's a less one, right? But at the same time, it's like if Xbox wasn't here, what would PlayStation have, like the fanboys, what would they hate? Who would they pick next, right? Would they go after Nintendo? Because they never bring up Nintendo, right? They always just bring up Microsoft and Xbox. Like, that's the competitor. There's no other competitor, right? Like, right now with the Last of Us port that's coming onto PC, right? There's people starting to push back at the Master Race PC, like, oh, you guys waited 10 years to get this. Now look what you've been waiting for. Right? Even, what's his name? Greg Miller made a skit, right? It was a bit, right, that he was doing, and the PlayStation people ate that up, and they're like, see, you should buy a PlayStation. And it's like, dude, that's a bit. He did a bit. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what he actually believes. So I just think that people, it's weird. It's like a sports team. It's like religion. You know what I mean? Or it's like no, you know what it is? I take that back. I retract that. I said this last night in my stream. It's like making someone's mom. You know what I mean? It's like if you're a PlayStation, you make fun of Sony. It's like you said something about their mom, and then they get all defensive. And same thing with Xbox, right? It's like making fun of their parents or something. It's like, settle down. You put $500 in a plastic box in a company that gives two craps about you, right? They just want to make money and make the game, and that's it. And I don't get it. I don't understand the infatuation with one box over the other. I don't. I understand you have preferences of, like, you enjoy it. You spent your hard-earned money on that box, but to then plant your flag and start to, like, spew this hatred for the other person that didn't spend the same amount of money as you on a plastic box, I don't know. It's weird to me. It's just weird.
And I'm always struggling to tell, am I dealing with somebody who is doing this for attention? Because I literally saw a guy on Twitter, he kind of got called out he sent out a tweet saying he was going to enjoy Starfield more because he knew people on PlayStation couldn't play it. And somebody kind of called him out, and he's like, oh, what, you don't ever do a bait tweet? And I'm like, what the is a bait tweet? What is that? What is that? Like, why would you do that? Like, I don't know. I guess I just interact with Twitter and creating content differently. It's like, I'd like to have a conversation. I'd like to say things that I think are backed by analysis or facts or data, instead of just, oh, I'm going to bait people, which I love what Greg did. I think his bit was hilarious. It was clearly a comedic thing. But I think people start to fall down the ladder from that, and they're just trying to be nasty. They're just trying to get a rise. They're trying to get attention. And I think that's been one of the more difficult things to do, is discern between somebody who's just trying to be a goading kind of, they're trying to gaslight and provoke an argument, and somebody who genuinely is just like, no, I think the deal should go through. I think this is going to be good for me. Because that I think is where it breaks down, is I'm trying to get to the people who actually think that, because I want to know, like, why do you think this deal is going to be so good for you? Like, what's going to happen?
Well, you know what it's like with the social media? It's remember, like, we were in high school, I'm sure this happened. Like, someone bumped into somebody in the hallway, right? They, like, chuck shoulders with each other, and then someone's like, hey, watch it, and someone's like, you watch it, and then someone in the crowd that's just as it goes, ooh, makes that noise, and then it aggs people on, right? That's what happened with Twitter, and like someone just throws that tweet out there just to see if anyone riles up and has fun with it, right? They actually don't mean it. They're just doing it because There's no face. There's nothing there. They could just throw something out there and see what sticks. And that's what's the fun part and terrible part about social media, because everyone can be that person that just throws out, I call them hand grenades, right? They just throw them out there just to see what damage it does. And then they scroll up and start to interact with those people that are like, what's wrong with you? You don't like Xbox? What's the problem? We have the most games on Game Pass. And then Sony comes back, well, we have the most exclusive titles. And then it goes back and forth. And it's like, who cares? Who cares?
Right. Well, and the argument that people keep using is, well, I'm going to get more games on Game Pass. That's why this deal should go through. Because I keep saying there's no net gain here. Them buying ABK doesn't suddenly create more games. It doesn't create more studios. It doesn't create more property. You're just shifting ownership. So, explain to me how this benefits you. How does this benefit the market? And their response is, oh, I'm going to get more games on Game Pass. And I'm like, so you think this is going to be good for the market because they're going to effectively create an ecosystem where less money's going into the market because less people are buying games? I don't understand how this is good, because you said in the immediate future this is going to be good for you. Why do you think long term it won't be good for you if Microsoft successfully buys ABK?
Well, when I say it's going to be good, I don't think it's going to be good. When I say that, I'm saying generalistic. People think it's going to be good because they can't see the forest through the trees. They're up against the tree thinking it's going to be fantastic because there's going to be more games on Game Pass. But I believe, just like the movie industry and stuff, it's going to diminish the quality of games and stuff because they can't keep up with the cycle. I'm going to bring it down to a shorter thing. When they made the first MMO, right, and people went out into the MMO world, and there was a cow and a fox, and they made those characters, and you go over and you kill them, and all of a sudden there's the pelts on the ground. They pick them up, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's good. But then everyone got on and started doing the exact same thing and completely destroyed the economics inside the game. So the developer was like, whoa, wait a minute. We didn't think that people were just going to go around slaughtering all the animals in the game, and then the respawn times are screwing up everything because we didn't think they were going to do that. Right now with Microsoft, all the games that are coming out, and if they have, let's say, World of Warcraft and Call of Duty and Diablo comes on and everything, great. Right now, it's fantastic for everyone because you're paying the $10, you're paying the $15, you're getting all these games, and it's great. But you're ravenous, right? You're going to go through the content. You're going to go through these games, and there's not enough games being made, and the games can't be made fast enough because it takes 3 to 5 years to make these games. And then these games, when they come out, they're broken, buggy, and unfinished. But it's okay now if they're broke, buggy, and unfinished and on Game Pass because you're not paying that full $60, $70 value of those games. So they're just going to kind of put them out there. They're going to be like a live service type of, I'm not saying all the games, but a lot of games will come out onto the platform where if it took 3 to 5 years to make, but they put them out year 2, and then they take the next 3 years to fix that game while it's on Game Pass, you're not going to be as bad because you're not paying full price for that game. Where the people that paid the $60 for that physical game or the full price digital game, they're going to be a little bit more upset because like, this is broken, unfinished. Well, Netflix can't keep up with the original content, right? This is why they canceled after season 1 or 2 of these shows, because they're putting $100 million, $200 million into these projects, and they can't film them and edit them fast enough to put them on the platform to compete. So it's not sustainable. What Microsoft is doing is sustainable now for them, but in the long term, they need the number to be like 100 million, 150 million people getting Game Pass for them to just keep throwing money into this. And if they can't do that, let's say worst case scenario, 10 years from now, all of a sudden Game Pass is still at like 50 million subscribers. They can't, this is a loss for them. They go, okay, well, we're done with this. We're just going to get rid of it. Everything that you've purchased, everything that you've bought, everything that is all gone with a blink of an eye because it was all in the cloud. It was all in the thing, and it's just gone. I was having a conversation, and I want to hear you real quick, Lono. Like, what is your son and daughter going to remember for video games? Right? There's no physical. Like right now, I can go pull off the discs off my shelf, grab my old Nintendo, grab my old Xbox, grab my old Sega Genesis, pop a game in, and I can still play that game. Where the kids nowadays, they forget what games they're playing within like months after they've played them, right? Because they're just all digital. Everything's digital.
Yeah.
What are they going to remember?
I mean, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about the physicality absence now that they don't have a cartridge, they don't have a game. I do know that it was actually pretty adorable. So the last time we were taking a trip, we were driving in the car somewhere, and it was going to be a long ride. It was going to be kind of a longer car ride. And my kids were like, oh, what are we going to do? Because they wanted to watch a movie or something. And we were like, no, we're not going to watch a movie. So we were actually, I know what we were doing. We were coming home from Ohio. And it was kind of adorable because my daughter said, well, let's talk about the games that we played. And she said, tell me about the game that you were playing. And then she was telling my son about Hi-Fi Rush. And it was really interesting how conversational they were at 9 and 7 about these games that they had played. And I thought, man, they're already doing the thing that so many of us do. They're like connecting relationally and in a communicative way about the games that they've been playing. So I think that's how they'll remember games. They'll sort of remember the experiences, and they'll talk about them in a more experiential social matter instead of talking about this thing that they bought, this thing that they owned.
Right.
And I've always said, I think that's one of the reasons that Xbox has a lot of potential to come up out of the water like a sleeping giant if they get their ecosystem, if they get cloud and play anywhere, all sort of harmoniously living on phones and computers and consoles and in your television. You'll think of them as just this place that you go that has all your stuff. Like, you just connect, you play online, you play with other people. I've even said games like Hogwarts are going to feel out of step in about 10 years. Why would I play this big, huge open game and I can't play or share it with anybody else? That's going to feel weird to that generation. They're going to think about games, I think, quite a bit differently than we do. It'll be more ethereal, out there living in some place instead of here and now. Instead of being a physical thing, you slap the cartridge in and the experience is there. It's on the cartridge. So I do think there's going to be a bit of a difference there. And that's where I think Microsoft is in some ways. They're ahead of the curve. They're looking 10 or 20 years down the line, which this is one of the reasons I think people should be concerned, because this has been my prediction. We're going to look back and regret or maybe even miss the days where you could buy a game a la carte. You won't do that in 10 years on Microsoft's ecosystem. I firmly believe that. Buying a game will be this distant memory. You will buy a subscription tier that gets you access to all the games on their ecosystem like cable television. They're going to treat it the way they treat Microsoft Office and their other software. All of it gets sort of baked into the cloud and their ecosystem. You want access? Pay a subscription fee. What are you going to do? If they own a third of the market, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Who are you going to go to for their games? I think that's the goal here. That's Microsoft's end game.
Real quick, Mr. Hall said, well, cloud's not just going to disappear. I'm not talking about the cloud disappearing. I'm talking about your games disappearing. Like, for instance, EA is turning down 1943. 1943 was the first game that was just digital. You couldn't buy that game as a physical copy. It was just digital. So it's on the Xbox 360, 1943, Battlefield 1943. They're closing the servers down. It's gone, right? And other games have done this before, and they're just gone. You can never play that game again unless they resell it to you. Okay, you owned it, you bought it. Sort of like, what's that other one we played, Lono? I can't think of it. Battleborn, right? Battleborn, right? Gone. It's a coaster. I use it as a Frisbee. I throw it to my dog, right? It doesn't do anything anymore. It's a physical disc I have. It does nothing. I'm talking about games not existing anymore, right? You go to the store, okay, and go to Target right now. Go to Walmart right now. There's less and less games, physical games in front of you. They're empty, right? They have the digital cards. It all goes to the cloud. If it all goes to the cloud, you guys don't. Most of you buy games secondhand, right? GameStop is going to be gone. GameStop won't exist because when everything goes digital on their cloud, this is where Microsoft wants to go with this, right?
Yeah.
They want to go all cloud. Your games you can't get secondhand anymore. It's going to be in-house only on their server in Game Pass. And if you want to buy it, you got to buy it at full price because you ain't getting it anywhere else. You're not going to get the digital copy anywhere else. You only can get it from their store, from their cloud server, and that's the way it's going to go. And once they get a percentage of all these games coming in, and they have a good price, and Game Pass right now is a phenomenal price. No one can argue with me, right, that Game Pass is a bad deal. It's $15 for both PC and console. It's $10 for, even if they raise it to $25, it's still a phenomenal price. they could raise it to $75, okay? And people would still buy it because most people only buy 3 games a year, okay? At $70 a pop, right? We're talking $210 at $70 a pop. Well, people are now buying $80 games and $90 pre-orders and 120 collector's editions, right? And you're buying 2 or 3 of these a year. So you're spending way more, okay, than what most people are paying for with microtransactions and everything. And Microsoft's plan is to put everything on that cloud, and yeah, they'll have a box for you. The box with no disk drive that you can't shove anything in, right? that you have to digitally download this stuff, right? And I don't think people see this and they're like, well, that's just the way it is, right? That's just the way it is. Life's digital. That's just the way it is.
I do want to thank some of the super chats, and I do want to include chat a little bit in these discussions. If you're here every week on Friday, my second show, I hang out with my man Mike, and we kind of chop up a topic, talking through the Xbox Activision deal. What do we think? Where is it headed? Why is it so dramatic and so hot and spicy? Hollow with a $5 super chat says, so when I point out the fact that I don't love these other creators' content as much, I get called a loney pony by the micro doc fanboys. Listen, just embrace not caring about labels. Labels are used by the small-minded. They don't have another way of entering the discussion. It's like somebody who has to put a label on everything in their fridge because they can't tell the difference between broccoli and Brussels sprouts, okay? Like, don't worry about people using labels on you. They're beneath you. Rise above, okay? A 5 spot from Perfect Image, and then a 2 spot from Zippy Narwhal. Guys, thanks for those super chats. I'm not going to go back and read those right now because they were sort of in the previous part of our discussion. Make sure you're smashing like as well on YouTube. It helps the video find more folks. So, Mike, the thing that keeps coming up is a lot of this sort of, well, that's competition, or, well, that's where things are going, sort of like this, that's totally fine with me. If you're looking at Nintendo and you're looking at Sony, what do you think is going to be the effect here? Because that is a concern people have is, okay, this deal goes through, there's going to be these reverberations in the market of other companies are going to want to consolidate. Amazon's going to want to scoop up. These guys are want to scoop up. Where do you see the side effects or the inadvertent effects on other companies? How are they going to respond to this? Because this is such a big section of the gaming market getting grabbed by Microsoft.
See, I think as gamers, we look at it. See, it's just not about gaming, though. And this is why a lot of companies are not speaking up. I know Google threw their hat in the ring about cloud recently, right? But Apple, Amazon, Google, like when Phil Spencer said this, was it last year, maybe even longer, a little longer? He said, we're not worried about Sony, right? They're not worried about Sony.
Oh, yeah.
He said he's worried about Amazon and Google, right? Mm-hmm. And Tencent and Apple. And if you look at through the history, Apple and Microsoft have been buddy through this whole thing. This is why Apple hasn't come out and said anything, right? Because Apple's going to do the exact same thing Microsoft's doing, just not in the gaming space. They're going to buy something else up that's a big percentage of the market, and they're going to bring it in, right? Or they'll buy little pieces up of the market that then makes the bigger portion of the market, right? You see what I'm saying? Like they're all doing the exact same thing. The problem with business is these big conglomerate companies, and this is me not talking crap. I mean, this is what businesses have to do. I call them, oh God, I'm losing the name, Unicron from Transformers, right? The Planet Eater, okay?
Right.
These big companies have to keep living on and expanding and doing what? So Unicron comes over and grabs a hold of that next planet and just starts chewing it up, takes what it wants for resources, and then gets rid of everything else. And that's what EA's been doing for companies all these years. That's what Microsoft has been doing with these companies all these years. That's what Sony has been doing all these years with these companies. Apple pies up all these little developers and all this. That's what happens. They have to keep surviving. This is going to happen. So this is why Apple and them don't say anything about what Microsoft is doing, because they're like, well, if we say something, then the FTC and then all of them are going to start making new rules where they might stop a company from being purchased over, let's say, I don't know, $3 million or $3 billion or $5 billion worth, right? You can't buy a company more than this because this is what happens. Yeah. And I think this is why the FTC is doing what they're doing, right? They're trying to stop bigger conglomerates from buying up these other big portions, right? I truly believe that. And I think this is the long game for them, is to use this as an example to stop future buyouts of stuff like this.
Yeah, there's concern that the companies that are staying really quiet right now are staying quiet because they have their own acquisitions planned. And it's like, well, if the ink is dry on a deal this big, we can do something smaller, and who's going to stop us? Because now you've got almost like case law. It's like, well, you let a company Microsoft size spend $70 billion. I mean, we're trying to spend a measly $10 billion. Like, what, you know what I mean? So that the consolidation effect, I think, will ripple out, and that will be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see people suddenly have a problem with consolidation who were cheerleading for Microsoft to buy up a giant portion of the gaming market, because I do think that's where we're headed. I think Amazon's being real quiet, suspiciously quiet. Like, why aren't y'all saying anything? And why is Apple not saying anything? You know, these are companies with massive, you know, buying power if they want to actually stretch and spread. Everybody's focused on Sony and Call of Duty, and it's like, man, they're not really a giant factor in what's potentially about to happen here. And I do think a lot of the times that's what people focus on, is they don't focus on what's going to happen right now. They focus on what could happen. And one of my pushbacks the other day about Game Pass was, you know, this is going to be good. Game Pass is a great value. Game Pass is a great value. And I said, well, you have to think about something. A lot of the games that are on Game Pass right now that are boosting its value and making it is, I've said this many times, it's one of the best deals in gaming. Virtually all of the games on Game Pass were built and developed under a buy-to-play paradigm. So they have a significant amount of value because they needed to in order to survive in a buy-to-play paradigm. Going forward, if Microsoft property and first-party property primarily exists in a subscription model, then your quality doesn't need to be as high as the buy-to-play quality because it's a subscription model. You've said this many times. You said, well, under a subscription model, who cares? You called out Doc Dark when he was on the podcast. It was like, well, what are you going to say about Starfield? It's on Game Pass. What are you going to, oh, this is low quality. This isn't good FPS. Well, you didn't buy it. It's on a sub fee. Who are you going to complain to? Who'd you give money to? Did you give money to Bethesda? No, you gave money to a sub fee. So maybe talk about that. Like the quality of Game Pass right now leans on games that were made under a buy-to-play paradigm. We're not in a true subscription model yet. We aren't.
Well, if you look at a lot of the first-party titles that Microsoft's doing, right? For instance, let's look at Redfall, the one's coming out recently, okay? Where the way they structured that game is that you have to play it by yourself first, right? Basically, yeah, it's co-op, right? Yes, there's no microtransactions, like there's no store in there, but Game Pass, they need people to stay on Game Pass. They need people to stay on Game Pass the longer they stay on Game Pass, because if they give Redfall in May and then they give another game in June or another game in July, they constantly keep you there. But if you're just playing Redfall, there's 4 different characters. They're going to constantly put in new characters, they said, right? Then there's going to be like DLC. If you look at like Sea of Thieves, it's just a cosmetic-based thing, but it's an open-world game. It takes quite a bit of time to get around. It's slow, basically, of what you're doing and progressing. Okay, if you're a diehard person, and I'm not talking about the diehards with the 1%ers that are blowing through the content in one day where they sit down for 12 hours. I'm talking about the average person that has Game Pass that plays a game. It's longevity, it's interaction. This is how they build games for Game Pass. Look at Starfield. Why does it need 1,000 planets to explore? Why? Right? Why is No Man's Sky on Game Pass? Well, because there's a trillion planets that you can explore, and you can just play that game and get lost in the trillion planets. And I'm constantly just playing No Man's Sky on Game Pass, right? I'm constantly playing Elder Scrolls on Game Pass. I'm constantly playing Sea of Thieves on Game Pass. There's these games that they're building. Forza Horizon, great game. I don't care what Sony fans say. Right? It's a great racing game. It's a wide open world that they're constantly putting stuff in that you're paying a monthly subscription to play a car game, right? Like this is how they've structured their content. So I think the reason that Redfall has the content that they have is because they want you. It's a slow grinding game that you play one character and you want to rise another character. Once you pick your character, you can't swap to the other character. You have to make another save for that character. It's a completely different game, right? So you have that other character now progressing through, and then the third character and fourth character, and then they add a fifth and a sixth. Starfield has 1,000 planets, and they're slowly gonna update or add civilizations to maybe some of those planets that you didn't know about, right? It's to keep you engaged. That's Microsoft's whole thing about the way they're making games, the way they're buying certain games, the way they're developing certain games. It's the Game Pass mentality of how do we get these people to play this game where it's interesting enough, but also keep them on Game Pass, right? And this is it goes hand in hand with all the other third-party copies that they bring up and put on there as well, right? As an incentive, like they bring another game on and they're like, oh, we have this. Oh, by the way, we still have Redfall. By the way, we still have Starfield. By the way, we still have Halo Infinite in the Forge mode, and you can do all this stuff. So that's the way they structure all their games now. And you can see it slowly with the even single-player games, right? Halo adapted a lot from where it was supposed to be, where it was supposed to be a single-player game, and then it was supposed to be they cut 2/3. Was it 3/4? I forget what they cut from Halo. But it was this online service game, sort of like what Destiny was, and then they scrapped it for the PvP, the PvP game modes and whatnot, the seasons and whatnot. So yeah, that's what Microsoft's doing. This is how they have to adjust to keep people on Game Pass. It doesn't matter if a game is good or bad. It's all about Game Pass, keeping people engaged into Game Pass, subscribing to Game Pass, and keeping them on Game Pass.
Right, and that, I think, is going to be the question, because anytime live service games come up, that's always the pushback. People are going to say, you're just not getting substantive content. It's cheap, or they're over-monetized. And that's something I've been kind of trying to say is, if you're under a subscription model paradigm, you're no longer operating under the we need to get a bunch of people to buy this really big title. You're no longer under the blockbuster. We got to have this really, really big thing. You're more in the trickle format of we need a good cadence. We need good reasons for people to log in and play. And that's been some sort of one of the things I've said is all of the fears around live service games. I think you can see similar fears that I have about what will happen to Game Pass. Now, something that Zubair pushed back on, he's a pretty sharp guy, he's a lawyer, he pushed back and he said, listen, he's like, Lono, you're acting as if Game Pass becomes really popular, it's going to affect the entire rest of the market. He said that's actually not true. Market studies show that they generally hit equilibrium. And his point was sort of the existence of entrance level, more like budget automobiles doesn't mean there's not a market for really high-end automobiles. You generally find equilibrium. There's a certain sector of the market that wants to buy Honda Civics, and then there's a certain sector of the market that wants to buy a BMW or Ferrari. And so, it goes up, obviously, Mercedes-Benz, and the higher the quality of the car, and then demand goes down, so price goes up. And so I started to maybe see that this won't necessarily be bad for gaming as a whole, but I would be worried it would be bad for the games that end up underneath that Microsoft structure, because I'm looking at like games like Hellblade, I'm looking at other games, I'm saying, oh my gosh, please don't treat this the way that you treated 343. Don't turn every game under your ownership into another Halo Infinite cautionary tale of massive contractual attrition rates, people leaving, creative directors leaving, employees constantly walking out the door because you don't want to pay them benefits. That's not conducive to development, and everybody just ignores that. They think, oh no, everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be fine. But I do think, big picture, this gives Sony a ton of room to really establish their identity as we're premium level. You're paying full price for our games. These are high level games. And then you got Nintendo. Does that give you any sort of like, oh yeah, that's a good thing, that's a bad thing? Where do you land on that? Like, if that's kind of the track record that we get into, like Microsoft's way more ecosystem, way more, they go quantity over quality, and then Sony's big quality, high price, and then Nintendo basically lives off their first party. Like, they don't need to do anything.
Well, I like what Zubair said, and I took that into consideration as I'm processing this right now. But what about if, right now Sony does tiers, right, for their streaming service. There's 3 tiers, and there's different bonuses that you get for the higher paid tier, right? Who's to say that now once Microsoft enables this Game Pass and this whole 3 billion devices, okay, what looks better to this developers out there? If I'm an independent developer, I make a game. Sony, I can work for Sony and I can sell my game to 100. Let's say they sell the most PlayStations ever. Let's give them 200 million, right? 200 million, which is 50 million more than the PlayStation 4 sold, right? So it's the best PlayStation ever sold. 200 million people can play it. Then the Microsoft goes, well, we have 3 billion devices that could potentially play your game, right? Who are you going with? 3 billion or 200 million, right? You would be an idiot to go, well, I'm going to go with the 200 million because 3 billion people can play your game. And now Game Pass is everywhere. It's on your cell phone. It's on your laptop. It's on your television set. It's on your, right? It's everywhere. And then it gets so popular, let's say, that they start putting tiers. We already have tiers. We have a $10 and a $15, right? We have a $10, right, which is just on console. We have a $15 that's on PC and console. Now we're going to have a family plan that's like $25, which is more accounts or whatever. But who's to say that all of a sudden a third-party game, let's say Hogwarts 2 comes out 5 years from now, and Microsoft says, we give you exclusive, just like Sony would. We want an exclusive on Game Pass for the first 6 months, first 8 months, and the people that pay $15 or $20 for that service can get Hogwarts now on Game Pass for the first 6 months. You see what I'm saying? So it can sway the way the businesses work, because if 3 billion people can access this and only 200 million people can access that at their best, then where's the competition, right? It gets farther and farther apart, because then people start to see, well, we sold 10 million copies over there, but 2 billion people played my game and I have a microtransaction that has $1 on there, right? It's leaps and bounds. It's literally night and day between these two companies where they can go.
This feels like a scaling problem, though, because if let's say Game Pass just absolutely explodes because of the ABK deal, I don't necessarily think that it will. I don't even think, even in Microsoft's projections, I don't think they think that it will. They've said all but that, we've hit saturation on console. Well, let's just set that to the side and say, let's say they get ABK and Game Pass just explodes and they get, 100-something million in growth. They're in the 120 million subscriber base. That's just so much dadgum money, right? Well, if you've got that many people that don't have to buy, let's say, Hogwarts 2. They don't have to buy Hogwarts 2 if it gets thrown on Game Pass.
Right.
That's a lot of people that Hogwarts 2 would have to consider, okay, 120 million. Let's just say a third of those people bought the game.
Right. Well, 2%, basically.
That's so much money that we could make if we just sold the game. Our name is enormous. We're Hogwarts, after all. So their compensation requirement at that point would be astronomical. Like Microsoft, this feels like a snake eating its tail. If you do grow, if the Game Pass subscriber base grows, that creates a larger impetus to pay these developers enormous sums of money to go on Game Pass, because you have a larger customer base that does not have to buy the game. So in order for that developer or that publisher to feel as if I'm going to be properly compensated, you have to pay me more. The more Game Pass grows, the more they're going to expect to be paid.
Sure, but if you're an independent developer and you're only expecting to sell, let's say, like we're talking, I make a game. I'm a one man team, and I go, you know what? For the money I put in, I need to sell 100,000 copies, right? I go to Microsoft. Microsoft goes, oh, you want 100,000? Here, I'll give you a check for 200,000, which is 100,000 more than you would have sold if it was a great game. Okay, and I'm like, great. So I give it to you. Now you put it on Game Pass. I have my money. I'm excited now, because not only did I make my money back, but now I made a profit and I don't have to do anything. And if it's successful, the next thing I do is even better, because now people go, oh, Mike made this game. The last game he made is really good. I'm going to buy his next game, type of thing, right? And that to me is a bigger payout than what you can do on PlayStation. Now I know chat's saying, well, 30 million is not impressive. 30 million is impressive, but it's also a small percentage of 120 million copy. Like there's 120 million PlayStations out, or 140 million PlayStations out.
Who said 30 million is not impressive? If you're saying 30 million in sales is not impressive, you're not educated. That would be an insane amount of sales. What are you talking about?
He says on single platform 30 million not impressive. Okay, so you're saying you're saying that I'm saying that 30 million. No, I didn't say that. What I'm saying is, if you're a developer, I work for Sony Studios. I sell my copy. God of War sold 11 million copies in what, 3 months, right?
Yeah, I don't remember the total.
Yeah, something like that. 11 million. And let's say it goes on to sell 30 million copies over 5 years. Okay, 30 million eyeballs, 30 million people out of 145 million PlayStations that are out there. It's a very small percentage, right? Okay, great. Take that same percentage and now divide it into 3 billion. That's a lot more money, right? Do you see what I'm saying? They have a potential of going out to more eyeballs, making more money to more people. That's what I'm saying, chat. I'm not saying that 30 million is not impressive. 30 million is very impressive, right? I would love to get 30 million of anything, okay? But 3 billion is a much more lucrative thing than, hey, we're going to sell yours to 30 million people out of a player base of 120 million. You see what I'm saying? That doesn't sound like a really good percentage. You're like, well, 3 billion, 120 million. I'm going to sell 30 million over here. I'm going to sell. There's more possibility of making more money here, but you have to trust in Microsoft.
Right. Yeah, that was my point, was that if you've got 30 million people buying your game at $60 to $70, if like your projections are like, that's how many we could potentially sell, and instead of doing that, you're going to let potentially 120 million some odd people just play the game and not buy it. That's 120 million people. They're like, we don't have to buy it. Microsoft has to compensate them. Like, they'd have to do their sales projections.
But if they have 100 million people paying for Game Pass each month, that's like, what is that? That's $1.3 billion a month, right? That's $12 billion a year. How much money could you throw to a company to make money if they're making that per month?
Right, but see, that's the question. If they're having to do that for every big release that drops on Game Pass, that every time Game Pass increases in its subscriber base, they have to compensate a big game even more. You also have to consider something. They're not even looking to get into that paradigm anymore. They want ABK so they can just put their own, it's their property at that point.
Sure,
like they're not writing a check, because Activision Blizzard is on record as to saying, we avoid Game Pass because it's cannibalistic to sales. So the question you have to ask is, right now, they're not owned by Microsoft, and Activision Blizzard is like, that's antithetical to us making money.
Yeah, until the owner owns you.
But when Microsoft owns them, ABK's production costs don't suddenly change.
Right.
So where's the money going to come from? That would mean that you'd have to see such a massive amount of increase on Game Pass subscribers to offset those production costs, because now you own all 11 studios that work on Call of Duty. And if you ain't selling Call of Duty anymore on your platform, that revenue loss has to be made up in Game Pass subscribers. So I think that's the dilemma with this business strategy. It's like, I don't know. And if you look at Microsoft's history, they're totally fine with this. They're totally fine with setting up a loss lead situation where they're losing money and they don't care, because they'll have a controlling interest of some of the biggest property in gaming. And then if you want to play it, that's the trick. I think in 10 years, the reason they're willing to do all these 10-year contracts is because they pull the lever in 10 years and they say, oh yeah, that stuff, you can only play it on Game Pass. You can't buy it anymore.
But that's my point. This whole thing, what I'm saying, like I'm fighting for, like, this is bad for the business, because sure, Microsoft makes, let's just say they make $12 billion a year. They have 100 million people. It could be 200 million. Who knows, right? 200 million people paying $10 or $15, or the family plan. This is why they're putting the family plan in there, right? $25. They're getting an additional $10 out of a household. Okay, where they were only getting 10 or 15, now they're getting 25. So they've exponentially already made more money from those accounts. Okay, this is the Netflix thing all again. They're going to be oversaturated, and they're not going to have enough money to make the games they want to make or continue. And this is why I say it's going to hurt the industry, because yes, they make all this money, but it still takes 3 to 5 years to make a game, and they need to make the content as fast as possible to put on the actual Game Pass, right? If they're not getting first party titles to put on their title on Game Pass, they have to pay the money outright to third party companies to put their games on Game Pass. If they want to keep this going, they have to continue growing Game Pass financially and getting more people to come in each and every single month. Well, this is the problem with Netflix. Netflix has it's oversaturated, and they can't keep up with the content. They can't make the content fast enough to do it. And this is my whole point of this whole conversation, is that Microsoft is going to put themselves in a position where they have all this stuff, but it takes so long to make. So they're going to put out games that are half-baked and still make money off you. They're going to raise the price of Game Pass because they have to, because it's still the greatest deal in gaming. You can't deny it, right? Like $15 if you're on PC and Xbox. And if you're just on console, it's $10 and you get games all the time. Right? There's so many games. My son downloads so many games and goes, I don't like it, and then deletes it and then downloads another one. If I had to do that, like, oh, let's go to the store. Oh, you want this game? Yeah, give me the 10 games. Let me pay $60 for all these games. Bring them home. Oh, he didn't like them, and then try to return them. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to do that. So it's fantastic for customers, but they're not going to be able to maintain the structure going forward. They're not. It's going to be a downfall of games.
I've continued to say that it'll be the Netflix Season 2 effect, and people think I'm making a terrible analogy, but it's a very similar analogy in that Netflix would dump a ton of money into a first-party show, it would increase subscriber count, everybody would watch the first season, and then the second season would have a far less effect on subscriber count, which means the ROI is greatly diminished, which means you now have an incentive to shutter the project, and that's the concern I have. For all properties and franchises underneath Microsoft's ownership, they will have that big, huge impact on Game Pass when they drop, but then future support, future DLC, future whatever will not impact Game Pass numbers and have that diminished ROI, which means you now have an incentive to shutter the project or maybe even the studio because they're no longer affecting the Game Pass subscriber count. Because fundamentally, I think that's what they're going to have to do, is they're going to need a very, very high turnover rate, as in not turnover of employees, but like a cadence of delivery. You've got to be able to deliver games on a regular basis because let's talk about this. So they get rid of
the... They can't even deliver seasons on a regular basis. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, golly. Yeah, 343 is an anomaly, apparently. The biggest and most well-known Microsoft property being treated poorly, managed poorly, employee turnover rates really high because of an actual Microsoft corporate-level policy. But 343 is an anomaly, sure. I'm sure Fable and Avowed and all these other games will be totally fine. Everwild will be totally fine. There's like 8 creative directors that have left, companies under Microsoft's ownership. But 343 is an anomaly, sure. Anyway, the dollar into Game Pass deal went away, and I don't think this is like a cause for concern or a slam on Microsoft. People were trying to use this as like a dunk on Xbox. Just stop it. This was a promotional thing that went for way longer than I think anybody ever expected it to. In the wake of this going away, they have their friends and family thing coming.
Yep.
And everybody is just chomping at the bit to take advantage of this. They're going to do sort of like a, hey, let's all go in on this deal and we'll each spend like, $5 or whatever.
Right.
And so the hive mind is already coming up with ways of like, hey, how can we save the most money? I mean, there were people that were upset that the dollar deal went away. Not because it was great for new customers, but because they were
taking advantage of it.
Yeah, they were using it every month. Like, wait, why are you so upset this is going away? Like, what are you talking about? I thought you were a big Xbox fan. Oh yeah, I am a big Xbox fan. Really? What are you doing? Well, I'm doing it every month. Oh, a promotional sign up for brand new customers. You were using it every month.
I'm such a big fan of Microsoft. I want to save $9 every month because I'm a cheapskate, right?
Yeah.
I'm already. I don't want to spend $10. I love the company, but I don't want to give them $10. I want to give them $1 each month and then turn that in for years.
I'm ride or die. But I'm only going to show up on the weekends. Okay. So, the thought I'm having here, is, what does Microsoft and Xbox want to do with this? Because Netflix for the longest time, like, joked about sharing passwords. And then all of a sudden, I think they realized, wait a minute, this is kind of a problem. Like, we're literally incentivizing people to not give us money. Like, we're giving people a way to kind of rip us off, you know? So do you think they're going to try to crack down on this? Do you think this is by design, that in their mind, maybe this will inadvertently keep people in the Game Pass funnel? You'll have less churn and burn because it'll be like, well, I want to sign up just this month for this game. But if you're doing family and friends with your buddies, it's a little bit harder to back out of that deal. Hey, come on, man, we're all in this together. What do you think the game plan here is from Microsoft's perspective?
I mean, I think that's just it. They want people. If you're going to take 5 people, they have $5 a piece to go in on a family plan. And 4 of the people don't want it anymore after a month, but that one person's like, well, I want it. Well, then they got their extra person that they maybe goes in, or maybe he gets the $5 plan again, right? Who knows? But, or the $25 plan. But they want more people. They want more people to come in to adapt. And if you're here for 1 month, they're going to throw something else at you. You came in for Starfield, but all of a sudden they get another game to come in. You're like, oh, damn.
Right.
You're like, oh, well, I'll pay $5 again next month for it. That saves me money. Yeah, we're saving money. And then they got you. Before you were paying $1, right? Before you were paying a cheap $1 because you were doing your plan, but now you're paying $5. So they're getting $4 more out of you, right?
Yeah.
So that's smart. Well, Netflix, they're trying to crack down on users, right? Because half the people are stealing passwords or sharing passwords, right?
Yeah.
So 100 million people were sharing passwords. I love Netflix. I love it, but I don't want to pay for it. I don't want to pay for it. I love it for free, right? So you got the exact same scenario that's going to happen with Xbox. It's going to be probably a little harder to share a password because the box you have to go through is attached to Xbox, Microsoft. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. So I feel like the crackdowns can be easier maintained from Xbox's point of view compared to what Netflix is doing, because Netflix was using smart TVs and they're using their own other boxes like Roku and all these other things. So it's really hard to crack down on where you're watching it at the time you're watching it. But with Xbox, yeah, you can play it on your iPhone with the Game Pass cloud gaming anywhere. But they know you're logged in underneath your account with that account. You know what I mean? So no matter where you are, it literally, when you log into your phone or log into your tablet, it says, do you want to play here or do you want to play over on this device? So you're connecting to that. If 2 devices at the same time come on, will they know? Probably, IPs and whatnot. So I think Microsoft can crack down a little bit more than what Netflix can do. So yeah, they're just trying to get an extra $4 out of the people that loved Microsoft so much they didn't want to pay the $10.
What do you think about this congressional letter? Did you take it? Did you pay any attention to this? Where like the letter of Congress of Japan saying that Sony has 98% of the Japanese video game market. They're only looking at the high-end console percentage, and everybody keeps telling me, well, that was Sony's argument. Sony's the one that claimed that, the regulators should only look at the high-end consoles. And I'm like, yeah, because they were talking about Call of Duty. They weren't talking about the Japanese video game market, like Nintendo owns, basically. It's theirs.
Yeah.
Like, what did you think of this letter that they sent?
I didn't pay any attention to it, really. I'll be honest with you. Like, I at this point when I was listening to it, I was just like, they're just looking for anything now to like, they're just grasping for straws. The goalposts are moving. I didn't care much about it. Like I said, I didn't pay much attention to it.
Yeah, basically the consensus of it was they were saying, hey, to the Japanese regulators, we have this trade agreement, and we're hearing reports that Xbox just can't get a foothold in Japan because of these exclusive deals that, Sony does. I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. Nintendo doesn't have a single one of those exclusive deals, and they had 18 of the top 20 video game sales last year. 18 of the top 20 were all Nintendo. It's like, I don't know. The reason I wanted to talk about this today is the idea being the Xbox Activision deal. Why all the drama? Was just trying to understand why this is so personal for everybody. Like, what is it that is driving this? If you were to try to diagnose it and you were like looking at people's behavior and like, why are people doing this? Like, what do you think are some of the driving forces behind the behavior and the toxicity about that it's so boring. It's an acquisition. For the longest time, when I would try to cover this, we would end up in a really weird search funnel on YouTube because I would end up with like financial reporters and YouTubers, and then all of a sudden we started getting traction because like gamers took an interest. It's actually kind of boring to read through PDFs
It's very boring.
and financials and looking at sales charts. I'm like, this is what we care about. We're gamers, and like this is what we're gonna get amped about. Okay, all right, here we go. Let's do it.
I think it's society itself. I mean, look at the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, right? Gamers, non-gamers, doesn't matter who you were. You didn't even follow them. You picked a side. You picked a team. You were either Team Amber or you're Team Depp, right? It's exactly the same thing, right? You're Team Xbox, you're Team PlayStation. You're trying to figure out. So I think most people are just bored out of their mind, and they feel like this is interesting, and they're like, well, let's see what team we're rooting for. Like everyone's in the hall with like flags and Sony, like the pin flags, and they're swinging them around going, oh, Team Sony, yeah. They make a good point. Like that's what I feel like it is. I feel like it's a sporting event. I think most people don't give a crap. Honestly, I think most people don't give a crap. I would say, and I'm speaking generalistic for your chat, I think they're there more for you than they are for the actual story. I don't think most of your chat gives two craps about the whole Activision Blizzard deal. I think a small percentage does. Everyone else is there just to hang out because they think it's entertaining, because you make it entertaining. You see what I'm saying? I don't think the actual event itself is entertaining. It's boring as hell. It's like watching paint dry. Okay, just let me know. Let me fast forward. Where's my DVR? Wait, is that even a thing anymore? DVRs? All right, let me just fast forward, right, to get past to the good parts.
Yeah, because we actually have a really good year ahead of us in gaming. There are some enormous games on the horizon, and I don't think we're getting out of this anytime soon. Do you even have a guess how quickly this thing ends? Because the FTC, they're not even starting theirs until like August. The CMA is getting ready to move to cloud. I don't think the cloud gaming will go as fast as console gaming. I think there's a lot more intangibles and a lot more effects to analyze, and maybe even more companies to weigh in. When do you see this thing finally coming to a close?
I think Michael Packner said on Destin's podcast, so that I covered as well. He talked about how the deal was going to go through, and if it doesn't go through in the European thing, they'll just make a separate company, abide by the laws of over there, while they continue moving with the rest forward, right? So I think that's what happens. I think they're going to go through. They're like, hey, yeah, okay, we got what we wanted. You continue doing what you're doing. I think it'll go through July or August. I think it'll be set in stone and ready to go for the rest of the world. I think in particular sections it might not move forward for the Call of Duty deal and whatnot. As far as the cloud, I don't think anything's going to stop this thing. I think this is going to go through. And like I said earlier, I think FTC has a bigger plan in mind down the road to try to stop other big companies from doing stuff like this. But I think the whole the Activision Blizzard deal goes through. I think they implement everything by this end of this year for Blizzard. So you're going to start seeing games from Blizzard on Game Pass or whatnot. And then by perhaps this time next year, I would say that Diablo would probably be on Game Pass. Like Diablo 4 would probably be on Game Pass, and whatever else they're working on will be on Game Pass. I still think that World of Warcraft, I think they're working on some sort of controller support to put so you can play it on the console.
Oh, yeah. So I was reading chat. I missed it. I was listening to most, but where you think it's closing this year?
Yeah, I think I think they're going to move forward, and let's say the Europeans, like, they still have a problem with it. They'll just, like Packner said, he said they'll just make another company, abide by the laws that they have to do for over there, but move forward with everything else and continue just like everything's fine, right?
Okay.
They can't make money with Call of Duty like that, or they can't put it over here for this particular country. That's fine. They just make a separate entity, put that in that section, and everything else will move forward as is.
Well, and I want to push back on something I'm seeing in chat that is quite literally false and not true, that the deal can go through without the FTC. That just isn't true. Microsoft operates within the United States, so that would be seemingly impossible. And the idea that the FTC has no power in there in a shambles, a very quick Google search makes that sort of a claim just look fundamentally flawed. I mean, they just got done fining Epic $245 million. They're fining BetterHelp almost $8 million. Last year, they got Twitter to pay like, $150 million in a penalty about breaking privacy laws. The FTC's handing out fines faster than Call of Duty contracts are being handed out. The FTC is actually cracking down on this stuff. Posturing as if the FTC has no power, or as if the FTC isn't going to be able to stop this, or they're in a shambles. There are substantive, large fines getting handed out. They are cracking down on all kinds of things right now, which is exactly what we should want to see, because I believe we are entering the early stages of the singularity, which is the theory that tech will advance so fast that we will not be able to predict the outcomes. Like right now, you can kind of predict outcomes and track trajectories of tech advancements. But right now, every week, there is a compounding effect of the advances of just AI. Just AI itself in the last 3 months has had a compounding effect on itself of rapid explosion of use and sophistication.
They've asked for it to stop. They said that the leaders have asked it to stop. They let's put a pause on the AI for 6 months, shall we? Yeah.
Yes. And so you have to think about that, in a matter of probably a year, the entire tech industry, video game industry, everything is going to change in about a year. And so this idea that we look at regulators and regulatory bodies as if they don't have any power and they're stupid, they don't know what they're doing, we're going to need them to protect us and to protect the markets from abuse from companies that we're just willingly handing so much power to. Like, put down your console allegiance for a second and think as a citizen, think as a human being, think as somebody with a digital footprint, a digital privacy footprint. Like, think about the devastating outcomes that could happen from just handing these companies power within the cloud, power within AI, power within ownership of property that you would like to consume or interact with. So I continue to think that people think way too simplistically about this, way too tribalistically, and they're not thinking big picture. They're not thinking what this will do. And this is why looking at this and saying, oh, it's just not a big deal, just let it go through. Are you going to say the same thing when all these companies are trying to gobble up AI tech and trying to control AI tech? Because
which they are right now.
They're right now doing that.
Right now, doing that. Yep.
And we're all sleeping like, let's talk about Call of Duty. Oh, thank you, Ricardo, for becoming a member. I appreciate that very much.
And they're implementing it into everything right now. Bing has got it, and then the people bought Google. Picked up the guys who made ChatGPT to bring them into the company to make a counter thing against ChatGPT, right? Like every possible thing that's using AI, even video games. Look at what Epic is doing with their new engine for Fortnite engine. That was just mind-blowing. I don't know if you watched that, right? Like that was insane. But the AI that's doing procedurally generated stuff, like inside the actual software itself, like it's crazy. It's exponentially faster, exponentially. It's going to change the landscape of everything that we're doing right now.
Well, as far as games coming out this year, do you see Microsoft making any more shifts? Because I've been predicting that Xbox Game Pass is going to fundamentally change. We got the showcase. Rest in Peppers E3. So you got this showcase happening after Summer Game Fest, and I've been saying I think Microsoft walks out and trots out changes to Game Pass. I think the removal of the dollar deal and the family plan thing that they're doing, I think that's literally seedbed. Like that's the first thing they're doing, and then they're going to announce all these changes. Do you foresee Microsoft doing anything significant at this showcase with respect to Game Pass? Because I think they're anticipating the ABK deal going through. And as you said, oh yeah, they'll put Diablo on there because Rod Ferguson had to come out and be like, no, Diablo's not going on Game Pass. I actually think that's another question. I think that Diablo is going to sell poorly on the Xbox because everybody's going to be in a holding pattern. They're going to say, "Oh, I'm going to wait. It's going to hit Game Pass. They're going to get ABK." So I think it's going to have a diminishing effect. So Game Pass can have a cannibalistic effect on game sales even when a game's not on Game Pass. So what do you foresee any changes this year?
Diablo comes out in June. The deal's probably close in July or August. So yeah, it's not coming to Game Pass until the deal closes. And then Ferguson will be like, we already told them it didn't come on Game Pass. And Microsoft's like, yeah, sit down, Ferguson. We're putting it on Game Pass. We didn't pay $70 billion not to put it on Game Pass, right? Like, so I think a big announcement that they're going to say, I think that Keystone thing that they were working on, that all digital box, I think they announced it. I don't know if it comes out this year, but they'll make it aware and say, like, here it is, and this is what it does, because I think that's what they want to push forward. They want to push to try to get people, a $100 box or something to sell to you so you can plug it into any television set. Now you don't even have to have a big $250 console. I think they announced something like that. I think they announced that Activision Blizzard deal is pretty solid. They've signed the dotted line of some sort. As far as games, I don't know. I mean, hopefully, is that what you're asking? Like, is any other games coming out, like a Fable or stuff like that? Are they going to show like Fable, or is that what you're asking?
I'm curious if you think they're going to use the showcase to announce changes to Game Pass, because I'm anticipating a price increase fourth quarter of this year. I think they raise the price in Game Pass after they get all their launches out, because they're already raising the price of Starfield and Redfall if you actually buy them traditionally. I don't think they want a double whammy. I think they're going to wait to increase Game Pass pricing until after Starfield's out. So I imagine they're going to be using the showcase in the summer to announce changes to Game Pass, because they're going to want people to see a value increase in Game Pass before or in conjunction with that price increase.
Well, I don't think they take the base price up. I do think they announced the family plan officially, right? And I think they officially announced the Keystone, or whatever they're going to call it, because it's part of the series, right? Series S, Series X, and then there'll be a Series Pocket, I don't know, whatever the hell they call it. That will come along with the family plan. I think it goes hand to hand, because if they can give you a deal of a $25 family plan for Game Pass, and they come out with a box that you can just hook up to any television, where if you're a family member and you're like, oh wow, I can pay $25 and pay $100 for this box, or $60 for the box, or the little thumb drive that you shove into a television set. That would be like a bundle pack for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, buy the family plan, get one of these boxes, type of thing. I think that they could do something along the lines of that, especially with the leaked footage of the new controller that's supposed to come out with the little touch screen in the center. I don't know if you saw that, but there's like a patent for a new controller. So I think they do talk about more technical stuff like that, like the controller, the box, and then also the family plan. I think that'll be the big announcements coming this year.
Yeah. The guy in chat saying that I'm acting like it's a bad thing. Why would, people waiting to buy Diablo because it'll be on Game Pass? I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but these companies are in the business of making money, and making less money is generally considered a negative outcome, right? It's not a moral, It's not a moral judgment. I'm saying, if you're trying to maximize Diablo 4 sales in the first week or two because they have a vested interest in doing that, they literally answer to shareholders, sales projections, they have revenue ROI thresholds that they would like to meet, and seeing less Diablo 4 copies sold on Xbox because of an external thing happening, this ABK deal, and people waiting and not buying, that's a negative outcome for the profit and the revenue generation of Diablo 4. This is so basic, explaining it almost is embarrassing. Like, I shouldn't have to explain this. That's a fair thing to say. Not everything is a slight or a dig at Xbox. That's just basic market analysis of, like, this could be a negative outcome of it not being on Game Pass.
We already have evidence of this. Outriders came out. Outriders was supposed to come out full-fledged on all systems, and then a month before it was supposed to drop, they announced it on Game Pass, and everyone was like, yeah, I'm not going to buy it now on Xbox. I'm just going to pick it up on Game Pass. Like, this is an actual thing that happens.
Yeah, and People Can Fly tweeted and said, if you want to support us, buy the game. They were basically saying, without saying, please don't cancel your pre-orders. Like, what? And then People Can Fly weren't even paid a royalty because they didn't generate enough sales. Now, people could say, oh, it's because the game flopped, but you have to see that the lowered revenue, who knows how many thousands of pre-orders would canceled. I mean, the dadgum press told people to. They were out here telling people to cancel their pre-orders of a game. Like, that's not a dig. That's just That's basic market analysis of like, well, I'm not going to buy this because I can wait, or it's going to be on a subscription fee, and that's just less money to the companies, and that's never something that is a desired outcome for selling your product. And listen, I actually don't think people are saying, the deal. I think even Mike, you said that the deal will be done in July. I don't think that's possible because you got to wait for the FTC. This idea that like they can bypass the FTC, I don't think the FTC is doing any of their stuff until like August. So the concern would be that this will get kicked all the way through the rest of this year, maybe even to next year. Because I do think the deal fundamentally, I think it goes through. I think Microsoft is in a strong enough position to make enough concessions and adjustments to get this thing to slide through, but it's just going to be slow because of the size and scope of the deal. There's so many connected potential outcomes of, well, how's it going to affect this? Because they haven't even cracked the seal on the discussion about mobile. They just they haven't. It's like, what? I mean, you just had Bobby Kotick just shot a hole in the bottom of the boat with China, and you think that there's not going to be potential ramifications of an inquiry about the effect on the mobile market? Like, Bobby Kotick bull in a China shop, burns a bridge with China, which is one of the largest mobile gaming markets in the world, and you don't think that, this is done. This is signed, sealed, and delivered. It's like, no, it's not. They got one provisional conclusion about console gaming. Like, the deal is touching 4 different markets globally.
Yeah, I think the bigger chunk, I think because Sony was the biggest one that was making the biggest noise, they're kind of quiet now. I don't think that if the FTC comes out and says something about the mobile market, but nobody in the mobile market comes out against them, you see what I'm saying? Then if everyone's quiet, then they're going to be like, well, I guess there's not a problem type of thing. You see what I'm saying? Like if Apple has no problem with them doing what they're doing, then like Apple's the largest one in the gaming market for mobile phones.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't say anything, that's like you fighting for something that you don't believe in, but you're going to defend for it, even though the people that you're sticking up for don't care. They're like, yeah, I don't care. I'm not offended. I'm not like you're standing up for someone. The FTC is trying to stand up for it, and they're like, yeah, no, we're good with it. They're okay to have the mobile market because we're still the leaders. I don't think it goes as dragged out as long as what's happening right now with the Call of Duty and the gaming market and stuff like that. I do think they address it, but I don't think it gets dragged out as long as because I honestly don't think Apple's going to say anything.
I don't think they're going to say anything either. I think they have a gentleman's agreement. I do.
Yeah.
I think there's too much assured mutual destruction if Apple and Microsoft come to blows. So I think Apple's going to get out of the way. I think Apple has their own acquisition likely planned, and they'll have a mutual agreement to not hurt each other in this.
Yeah. There was one time when Microsoft owned stock in Apple. I mean, they sold it like 20 years ago, but they literally owned stock in the other company. So they have an agreement, right? If we think about it or not, they have something because there needs to be 2. If there's not 2, then there's no competition. If there's no competition, then the other person doesn't make the money as like they do. Same with Sony. Sony needs Microsoft to have the market they have. If Microsoft leaves the market and goes to the cloud gaming and they don't care about console gaming, who's Sony going to pick a fight with? Nintendo? They're going to lose that fight with Nintendo because everyone that plays PlayStation is like from ages of like 16 to like 34. Everyone that plays Nintendo is from birth to death. You know what I mean? Like you're born, they hand you a Nintendo, and then when you die, they take it away. That's the parameters of Nintendo's fan base.
Well, and people in chat are saying, Microsoft has said they can push the deal through without the FTC. They don't need the FTC. I wonder if they said that at the same time they accused the FTC of being unconstitutional, and then they had to officially walk that back and apologize. Did they have that same energy and that same spring in their step? Because I don't think they can just be like, no, yeah, we're going to push it through without the FTC, because then the FTC would sue.
No, I think they can, though, because that's what Packner was saying. Michael Packner was saying that. He says they don't need them. They can just go on, make a separate entity to just deal with that part that they have a problem with while they continue on.
So they would make like a global company, a non-US based company, and do this in all these other markets while they deal with the FTC?
Yes, that's what he said. He said basically they could just make another company and just deal with the thing and do the regulations that they need to deal with in those areas that they need to focus on, and then they can just continue on.
See, that's hilarious to me that people think that's a dunk. You're literally saying that this company is so big and so monstrous that they can ignore the government, the regulatory body in America. Like, you don't even hear what you're saying. Not you, Mike. Like, these people don't even hear what they're saying. You're like, yeah, man, Microsoft is so big, they can just ignore the FTC. You think that's a good thing. You are literally wearing a blindfold and you're wearing clown makeup at the same time. Like, that's got to be one of the dumbest ways to look at this. Like, that's not a dunk or a brag. That should terrify you. Like, oh yeah, they're so big that the regulatory body that's supposed to protect us and the market, they can ignore them. Like, they can just ignore them. That you think that's cool. Why? Because you like a plastic box. Like, they don't deserve that level of trust.
Here's the thing, chat. Packner said what he said, and you guys think he's a joke or whatnot, but he has a lot more knowledge than me and Lono on this, right? He's in the industry for 20-something years being an analyst and predicted things in the past. He might be wrong, sure. But I guarantee you he knows more information than both of us and everybody in chat. Right, because he's privy to certain information for certain ththings. Now, if Packner was talking about the the European market and not the FTC, the UK and not FTC, maybe I misspoke or misheard. But I'm pretty sure that a company, though, I didn't know they could do that, but it sounds pretty reasonable now, right? You look at it and go, just like Lono said, it's a big company. It's not right, but they're so big, they're like, yeah, we'll just make another company and do this, and we'll work it out later. I mean, that's money. Whatever we say, money talks and, BS walks. So they slip the palms of people and keep on moving with business because Unicron's got to eat.
Talica is saying that before a federal lawsuit is filed, Microsoft can still proceed and close the transaction. Once a federal suit is filed, they can't. Right, like that's the thing. Whether or not that's how it shakes out, to me, you're quite literally making my case for concern, my case for caution, my case for this deal shouldn't go through by saying this company's so big, they can just ignore the regulatory bodies. They can do, loopholes. Like I said this the other day, what really concerns me about some of these companies and their size and how big they are getting is a lot of these fines that the FTC is handing out. It's almost like to them it's just the cost of doing business. It's like that's just a business cost. Big pharma and now we've got big tech. They're like, that's fine. No pun intended. That's fine. You can fine us. We have enough money that it's easier for us to do that, to just pay the fine.
Yeah, the $3 trillion company? Like it's ridiculous.
It's like, yeah, just give me the speeding ticket. I don't care. I got to get to work on time.
All right, come on, just write it down. Put a price on the thing. Let me go. I got places to be.
Just bill me. Just bill me the speeding ticket. I'll speed every day. Like a really rich guy. If you're only using cameras to fine him for speeding tickets, he's not even going to care. He'll view that as a toll. He'll be like, yeah. I'm a billionaire.
Remember growing up, they would tell you that obviously Elon Musk is the most rich person now. But remember that thing they would tell us that Bill Gates, if he sees a $100 bill on the ground, he doesn't even bother picking it up because he makes 10 times that before he even picks it up. Like that's Microsoft in general, right? They have so much money they don't care about these little infractions. Sorry, and to change it, I said pervy, but I meant privy. That's what I meant to say earlier. Like he's privy to knowledge of the industry.
You call him pervy.
Not pervy, yeah.
Oh, man. He'll watch the episode and be like, I don't understand why they said that about me.
Why did he call me pervy?
I'm a very nice man. Jet, with a $5 tip through Super Chat, says, Xbox can close without the FTC, as the FTC can only stop the merger if a federal judge signs off on it. Either way, the FTC case will continue. Right, and that's it. I think a lot of times when I talk about this, and this is underneath the subject of today, is like why the drama, is I am not approaching this from a desperate, oh, this deal better not go through, or oh, this deal's not going through. I've never really couched my content in that. I've kind of said since the beginning I think it's going through. Now I did say in January I thought I don't know. I've been saying this deal's going through, and I kind of changed my position. I was like, I think it's going to get blocked. There's a lot of people weighing in. Now, Microsoft answered back, did a good job. They got the CMA to do a provisional conclusion. But that's not a discussion. Like, I'm sitting here expressing concerns. I'm looking at Microsoft's behavior in cloud services. Google's kind of exposing some things there, cloud services. That strategy with cloud services and those contracts and those European markets is definitely, I think, going to be replicated in their strategy and their approach to gaming. And the comeback is, it's just going to close, bro. Just deal with it. It's like, well, you're not even having a conversation with me. Like, you're not defending it from a business or market analysis viewpoint, or this is going to be good for me. I mean, somebody might say, oh, I'm going to get more games on Game Pass, but then they ignore the fact that like reverberations from this could lead to more consolidation, fewer choices, fewer production, fewer products, because the more consolidated the market gets, the more downsized some of these markets have to get to recoup their costs on their purchases, because production costs are going to prevent them from getting quicker ROI. So expediting ROI on these massive consolidation purchases and mergers is going to be sped up by downsizing, which is going to limit your choices, limit the products coming into the market, and the less market getting product coming into the market is actually going to decrease the amount of things you can buy, which tends to raise the prices. None of that matters to you. It's like, I don't understand. None of that matters. You don't care about any of that. You don't care about the effect it's going to have on what happens with gaming, quality of the gaming, the money that you're required to spend to get into gaming. I just watched an amazing short video of this guy's explaining like how inflation got double whammied, and he's talking about how you had like a supply shock, and then not just a supply shock, you had people saving money, and then all of a sudden all these people are coming into the market and flooding the money with cash, and so the market gets hit twice, and that's why, you know, inflation went up as high as it did. And it's like, that simply happened because supply lines got choked and people had to stay home. And look at what it did to the market, and look at what it did to the money you have to spend on basic things. And you're looking at gaming, you're just like, I don't care if any of those things happen. I don't care if any of those ramifications happen, because I'm going to get more games on Game Pass. Like,
yeah. Chat, the problem is, like, when Lono's speaking about stuff like this, and someone just comes out with he gives you like a 6-page essay of why he thinks the way he does, and then someone comes out, well, it doesn't matter, it's going to go through, and you have no rebuttal to that. That's what he's talking about, as far as like rebuttal. Like, give a reason why you think it's going to go through, instead of going, well, it's just going to go through, that's it, right? Like, that's the problem when you're interacting with Lono in chat and stuff like that, right? Obviously anyone could just say real short answers, yes, no, but like, why do you think it's going to go through? Why do you believe it's going to go through? Don't just say it's going to go through and be like, shit, bro, shut up. Shut up, Lono. You don't know what you're talking about. I don't care about your 10-page essay that you just did. It's not going through. It's like, just interact with them, or don't speak, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, a literal 6-page essay considering his show opens. Yeah, they're getting lengthy. They're getting lengthy. And, you know, someone in chat saying, you know, more actually welcome consolidation and less see it as bad. I don't know how that's true, though, because if you look at the $400 billion that was basically stolen from the United States public, I mean, we were supposed to have this giant investment into a fiber optic infrastructure. We didn't get it. And nobody, where's the accountability there? Why? Well, there's consolidation. What are you going to do? How are you going to attack a handful of internet service providers? They control everything, price fixing, all of that. Same thing with your cell phone providers. Like, look how long that took. That was looked into. I think that was 2014 when that got exposed. That they got all this money from the American public to invest in a fiber optic, you know, infrastructure update, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. And you're like, does that matter to you? We're 27th in the world with respect to internet infrastructure. 27th. Why? Consolidation. So we look like fools, especially foolish, standing in the gaming world, a gaming world that depends upon the internet, depends upon internet infrastructure. And you're like, cloud gaming sucks. You want to know why cloud gaming sucks? Because you have internet that's 27th in the world. That's why cloud gaming sucks. You let we didn't let the government, oh yeah, let's let all this consolidation go through. Yeah, let's let all these internet service providers get really big. And then what are we going to do to them when they don't do what they're supposed to do?
Right.
What are you going to do to Microsoft when they get so big that they don't do all the things they said they were going to do? They don't give you more choices and better deals. What are you going to do?
I think the way you could look at this as an analogy is like a storm, right? When a storm comes across the United States and like does devastation to somebody, like the people outside the storm look at it and go, well, that sucks for them, right? Type of thing. Like that's the Microsoft wave of what could potentially happen. Like it could devastate the industry because of what they're doing, right? Maybe I'm being hyperbolic, but what I'm saying is you don't really care unless that storm comes to your door, and then you kind of perk up and go, oh, is my house going to get blown off? You know, am I going to lose power? Am I going to lose something? Because it's affecting you. If it doesn't affect you, you kind of just look on the outside and say, no big deal. I don't care. It doesn't affect me.
Well, Greg says, that's my problem. You're assuming that this deal will suddenly give Xbox complete control of the market. I never said that.
No, none of us ever said that.
I didn't say that at all. What happened with the internet service providers and the cell phone providers is the consolidation led to retaliatory consolidation, and they all gobbled up. And then you only have a couple of people in the market controlling everything. And then you end up with price fixing. You end up with fewer options. You end up with way less innovation because of that. So that's the point, is that if there will be reverberations in the market from this, if you think Microsoft's dropping $70 billion and all these other players are just going to sit by and say, well, good job, Microsoft. Those new shoes you got are pretty nice. No, everybody else with enough spending power and enough reach are going to do very similar things. This will have a reverberative effect within the market. Other companies will buy up, and you're going to turn around in 10 years and you're going to say the same thing we're saying about internet providers. Where's all our choice? Where's all the innovation? Where's all the advancements? Where's all that stuff we were promised? And they're going to say, what do you mean? What do you mean? What are you going to do? Who are you going to go to now? Who are you going to go to now? There's nobody you can go to for these games. There's nobody you can go to for this content. We got it all.
Look back in the 70s into 80s. Microsoft and Apple were fighting for computers, and then Microsoft has said, you know what? We're going to go the other direction. We're going to make software for the computers. And now you're on a computer. Most of you are probably, I would say 90% of you are on a computer with Windows, right? With Windows on it. I mean, they have the dominant part of the market. We're not saying they're taking over the whole thing, but we're saying is they're doing the exact same thing. They're taking what worked for the software for computers, and now they're taking the same thing and making Game Pass into that app, software, integration, something where that's what you're going to be getting to access to all of your games.
Wheezy says that people think that mobile is very diverse, but it's actually all owned by the same company. So you think, oh, I have options within cell phone companies like Mint. Well, Mint's owned by one of the larger cell phone companies. And you essentially have, this is from Gizmodo, a Gizmodo article about why America's internet is crappy and slow, saying that you have an oligarchy. You have three big cable companies, Comcast, Time Warner Cable, and Verizon, right? You know this well. 1 in 3 Americans only have one choice for broadband service. Most of the others only have 2. Without competition, there is no incentive for internet providers to improve the infrastructure. This massive telecom companies create a bottleneck for the last mile of service by refusing to upgrade critical infrastructure, and they can charge exorbitant prices for the subpar service while they're at it. So your internet is crappy, it's slow, and it's expensive. And people are like, well, internet's faster than it was 10 years ago. Yeah, by small margins. They figured out how to do like dual band through old copper lines to like give you higher speeds, but now it's basically capped. Like they can only squeeze so much out of those copper lines. It's never going to get any faster. And some neighborhoods are oversold, some neighborhoods are oversaturated, so you're always having high fluctuations of speed, terrible speeds during peak times. So you're looking at amazing examples of things that became endemic to daily life. Internet access and cell phones and video games are in a very, very similar, portion. It's like they're endemic to your daily life. And you're looking at that and you're saying, it's totally fine if over the next 5 years, there's just nothing but consolidation. And Microsoft will be the starter pistol. This is not buying a developer and investing in them like everybody, wants to point to. Well, Sony bought developers. I'd be totally fine with Microsoft scooping up some developers and pouring money into them. Now, I'd be worried about how they handle their companies, because if you look at 343, I continue to be worried that that's basically the model for how companies flourish under Microsoft. I'm telling you, this is so analogous to what we've watched happen in other tech sections.
Yeah, but history repeats itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't get another provider. I can't get another provider for my internet. I'm stuck.
Yeah.
I'm stuck with what was it? It was Bright House. I don't even know what the hell they're called now anymore. But the hell they called now? I don't even remember. I don't even know who I pay my bill. This is because of COVID. My brain's messed up now. But yeah, I have no options. I have stuck with my internet. My internet is what it is, and if I bitch about it, they're like, "All right, we'll send someone out there," but I can't leave. If I want internet, I have to pay them.
Well, and this is a pushback that we're now seeing. This is some of the new dialogue points. Oh, well, lead gaming developers are leaving and starting new companies. 3 such companies are developing exclusives on Sony. What is so consolidated? You do understand that that's not actually an increase in output. That's just a migratory effect. And if you think the size, scope, and I guess substance of those budgets and games will be equal to what you get from really, really large companies, really, really large developers, you're kidding yourself. You're not going to see that, because they just shifted over. And if we get into a consolidation buying war, small companies will be at risk. They'll be at risk. Like they won't have any negotiating power. They won't have any buying power. They'll be like, we're basically a small fry. So they're going to have to get scooped up. Yeah, new companies don't compete at scale. That's exactly right. Like they don't compete at the scale that these big companies do. So like just because some guy leaves, Playground Games and starts a new studio, are you kidding me? Where's the money coming from? Who's publishing that game? Who's going to back that game? You know what's going to happen? They become less financially solvent. They become financially shaky. And guess what? They're ripe for purchase.
Yeah, that's the whole reason the guys leave to go start another company, because they're like, I'm going to start another company, make a game, and then sell it off to the other big company. Right? That's what they do. They just keep doing that over and over.
Yeah.
That's how they make their money.
I genuinely think that's going to be something that you'll see happen. Like these smaller studios that start up, they'll be isolated, they'll be exposed, they won't have very good negotiating power, they won't have very good buying power, and you're going to see them almost have to get bought, because it's like, well, now what am I going to do? Where's the money going to come from? Because publishers,
Unicron's got to eat.
Yeah, Unicron's got to eat. You got to think about this. You're consolidating not just developers. You're going to consolidate publishers. And when you start consolidating the publishers, that little dev company, who's he going to go to? Who's he going to go to? All the publishers will get gobbled up, and who's he going to go to? Who's he going to go to for funding? Yeah, we don't want to fund your game. Oh, okay. Well, before you leave, we just prefer to buy you.
Yeah, and this is my whole point, though, back to Game Pass and Sony, $3 billion, $200 million, right? Where does that independent developer go? They're like, well, there's more people out here, so I'll get bought up by the bigger conglomerate company.
Yeah, because it'll be you won't have that power. You won't have that ability to negotiate. It's like, well, no one's going to want your game because look how small you are. Look how small your budget is. Look how small your team is. Like we're not going to give you a whole lot of money. We're not going to give you, anything in particular. So I do think you have to consider that has to be considered in the grand scheme of how this shakes out, is that these small companies that are kind of coming out of nowhere, I think that's great, but I don't think that's like an answer to, oh yeah, we'll be totally fine because creative directors are leaving studios and starting new ones. I don't think that's not something that's going to kind of save the market. I think one good thing that will come out of this is there will be the rise of the indie studio. I think you're seeing that in music, right? It became really unnecessary to go through big, record labels to make music. You can make music kind of in your home now. So there's been the rise of like the independent artist. They can get exposure on YouTube and all this stuff. So I do think you could see that. We're already kind of seeing that happen, right? Lots of indie games are coming out.
Well, then you also, it's a completely different show topic, but Epic, the way they're doing with their content, anyone that uses the Unreal Engine, they could do exclusivity of going, well, you made the game on Unreal Engine, so you can only put it on Epic Game Store. You know what I mean? Like that's another way you can do it. And Dave in chat said, Langer said that Microsoft could say, hey, if you make your game, we need it to be on Game Pass, right? They can limit people saying, if you're going to make this game, it has to be on Game Pass, right? That's exactly what they could do.
Well, there was an article the other day about that. Like, they literally had a dev that it sounded like they were singing the praises of Game Pass, but they literally said that you have to fight way harder to be successful on Xbox if you're not on Game Pass. And people were reading it as like, see how great Game Pass is? I'm like, wait a minute, read what he's saying. He's basically saying you can't survive on that ecosystem under buy-to-play. Like,
yeah, there was an article about a month and a half ago. The publisher, I forget the company's name, they publish Tunic and all these other independent games, and they said when they starting off on the brand new console with Game Pass, the first 2 years is very profitable for them because it's a brand new market. It's a brand new a player base coming in for the new system. But they say once the 2 years happens, the games get oversaturated, right? So now you're a fish amongst an ocean instead of a lake. You know what I mean? So the problem with the independent developers is that they make a game, and if they don't make it fast enough to get out in the first year or two, they just kind of go away because there's so much saturation of independent games, and then the bigger games come onto Game Pass. So if there's 10, 15 independent games, and then all of a sudden there's one Starfield that comes out, it overshadows everything else that's on the platform. So now people are not even looking for those independent games. So it gets more saturated. And this is, I think, a problem. I had a topic about this with Epic, with the Unreal Engine, because everyone's going to be using the Unreal Engine. Everything's going to kind of look similar, you know what I mean? They're going to look kind of samey, and it's going to be oversaturated because it's going to make it so easy that everyone can make video games now, but it's going to be super hard to try to, filter through all those video games to find out the gems, right?
I don't know. We've talked about that before. There are so many games in the Unreal Engine that don't look anything alike. Like if I look at Hellblade 2 and Fortnite, they're in the same engine.
No. What I'm saying is there's going to be so many people because it's so easy now to make a video game.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be an abundance of video games coming out.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So it'll be oversaturated to try to find your stuff. Like for instance, go through Netflix and try to find something you want to watch, right? You have to go through like layers and layers and layers of you're like, oh, this independent documentary that I can't find on there, unless you know the name because you saw it on social media and you're like, type it in. Just scrolling through, you get bored from scrolling through all the stuff. Even in the Fortnite game itself, to go to the discoverability of the player made like maps and stuff, there's just so many. You're just like, this is, now think about that as video games. Think about that as independent with Game Pass and Epic and everything else.
Well, Devil's Advocate would say that will drive people to make really incredible games to stand out. Like the cream will rise to the crop. Like you'll have games that stand out as, this is one of the most creative. I never thought to do this, right?
Yeah.
Like I actually think the gold rush of video game creation is about to happen because you have AI is going to simplify so many systems. You have that Fortnite creative engine that they just kicked out that is nuts. And they're monetizing it so that you make money if you make a really good game that people are playing. That's going to cause all kind of issues, though. They're already dealing with people who are trying to create like Mario Kart courses, and they're like, you can't do that.
You can't. Yeah,
you can't do that. You can't put other property in here. So that's a whole new interesting discussion of like, oh my gosh, what's that going to do to the game creation? And I saw Alana Pierce talking about this. AI replacing writers, replacing people to write story and dialogue. What about these deep fake voices? You're not going to need voice actors anymore.
There's a game that just came out. Well, it's not out yet. It's a space game that I watched the video the other day. I would have to find it. But it looks like Star Citizen. Real crappy, though. It has all these different systems. One guy created the whole game. It's on Steam. I'll forget the name. If I find it, I'll put it up there. But all the dialogue is done by AI voices. He typed all the dialogue, had the in ChatGPT, copied it into the voice thing, and the voice thing actually, so it speaks like an AI. You know what I mean? It's like you know what I mean? But it's like a robot. But to imagine that one guy made an open world game in space like Star Citizen, and everything's voiced by AI voices. This is insane, right? And that's
Nuts.
just one guy in like a week's time, like made a game, or a month's time and made a game. That's insane.
Neo Conquer says, "Get rid of the humans. We had our time." Yep. I mean, we're we're out.
All right.
You know,
All right.
Our new overlords are going to be, AI and
Can I pay a subscription
voices.
to stay alive though? Can I pay a subscription to stay alive?
Yeah, I wonder what the live service monetization factor is going to be
live
on.
service. That's right. The live service.
It'll be literally a live service. They're like, listen, we like providing you with food, electricity, and water, but you just
$45 a month.
the battle pass. You want the premium battle pass for living life. I mean, don't you want cheese on your cheeseburger? Come on, everything will be a battle pass with a premium tier on it.
A literal live service. Yeah.
That's the other element of gaming that I'm curious to see where things go, because I know Sony, they want to make 12 live service games, and I actually think you're going
to Spaceborne, Robert Jones, Spaceborne. That's it. Sorry,
yeah, Spaceborne 2. I think you're going to see an explosion of live service games clamoring to Game Pass because they fit the model better. If you fill the funnel with players and then you have a monetization structure of battle passes and cosmetics, and that's where you make all your money, buddy, you get paid on both ends. Microsoft writes you a nice fat check. You're in a very lucrative funnel of players, and if you make a really good game, then
it'll be televised or marketed on the front page. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's the thing I think companies are going to have to reconsider, and this is where I do think Game Pass could be very good for a lot of those indie titles and those scrappy developers, is create an absolutely incredible game, but set it up to be ongoing, set it up to be supported, set it up with good monetization, and you could make an absolute killing because Microsoft's going to pay you to put you there, but then you got this massive funnel of people trying your game out, and if it's good, they'll be more inclined to spend money in your game because they're like, well, I didn't have to pay to buy it. Like if you look at the actual free-to-play models of mobile games, I saw a chart once, it compared a $1 mobile game and a free mobile game, and the in-game spending was astronomically different just because, well, I paid $1, I don't want to give them any more. Versus I didn't pay anything.
Free. Yeah, exactly.
Because then you can justify all those little purchases. And Asmongold made that point the other day. He said, you have people that might not be able to drop $70 on a game, but they could drop $20 a week on a game because they make enough money, they get paid just enough to like trickle funds into a game, instead of like it's harder for like especially the younger generation to be like, oh, I'm going to save my money to buy one game. And that's where I think Game Pass could really tap into that generational shift and difference in people think differently about games. They think differently about spending. You and I don't do that. We don't like to be nickel and dimed in a game. They accept it.
Yeah. Well, that's another aspect that we can't talk about because we're not 8, we're not 10, we're not, kids that are coming up and how they treat games now compared to what we treat games. Like we love to buy physical copies and keep that game and play it over time and come back every once a year. Now the new kids, man, they all have ADHD. They're all running around real fast. They get bored real fast. They play a game, they put it down, they download something else. So that's where it's going. So all of us, even I would assume most of chat is like older. So we think completely different of the gaming space compared to what they're being conditioned as the gaming space now. Because think about it, there's games that are being developed. Like you have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. I have a 9-year-old. Like there's games, Destiny. It's been out that's from birth to now, right? They know that and they've seen that, so they get conditioned that everything's okay to have a microtransaction, everything's okay to have a store in there or an in-app purchase, or you know what I'm saying, a free-to-play game. That this is what they're being conditioned as young kids now. So when they get older and now they're adults, they'll be okay with it. They'll be like, yeah, and Grandpa will be good. Get off my lawn! I had to pay $70. They're like, what is $70? I just played on the subscription service of Game Pass.
That's
our
right.
Lord and Savior. Yeah,
That's
our
right.
Lord and Savior, the Game Pass.
Well, there was a pretty big thing that happened that I want people to. I've got a video about the Last of Us situation, right? The Last of Us port to PC, holy disaster. So surprising. property from Naughty Dog to look this way. This is something they are literally not known for. Like, their games are usually so good. They didn't do the port.
They ported it out? Oh, they didn't do the port.
Iron Galaxy did the port, but if you read, I have a video. I'm going to send you guys to the video in just a second with redirect. I want to give Mike a chance to tell you where to catch him, but my video reads through their blog that they posted, and it sounds like they were involved, but it's weird. The blog reads weird. Like, there's ownership, but there's not ownership. It's very odd. It seems like they're taking over PC porting from here on out. So hang tight, guys. I'm going to send you to that video in a moment. I'm also going to be on Crossfire tonight, so make sure you're following me on Twitter and in the Discord so you don't miss that. And then I'll be doing a member stream tonight after Crossfire. But I want to give Mike a chance before we kind of end today's episode. Great episode, great turnout. Make sure you guys are smashing the like button, man. We had a lot more people here. We should have 300 likes. But Mike, where can they find you and where can they watch you?
You can go to 30NSG is my main channel. We do live streams, talks, let's plays, podcasts. That's all there Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock in the morning till noon, and then 8 p.m. to about midnight. So wherever you are around the world, those times, that's all Eastern time zone for me. So put it where you need to put it. And then I also have another channel, which is 30 and Still Gaming, which is just if you like simulator games, if you like Farm Simulator, I'm doing farm content over there on that channel as well. And yeah, I'm going through depression because I want to play Diablo 4. So, I miss it. I feel
like everybody's going through Diablo 4 withdrawal. What was your favorite class coming out of it?
I still like Barbarian and still like Druid.
What is the matter with you? They're the worst classes.
No, but not from my perspective. My perspective is the very first time I play through the game, I'm going through the story, and I don't care about min-maxing or anything like that. I just want to take the character and go through the story on the adventure, like the setting, and just play through the game. Now, once I'm done with that first playthrough, then I dive into the other ones and see, what it is. Yeah. Well, from my perspective, okay, Obi-Wan, from a certain point of view, they're objectively so bad. They're so bad. Oh my gosh. Mike's a grown man. He likes what he likes. No, listen, I love him for that. That's why he's a friend. That's why he's on the show, right? You cannot tell this man what to do or what to like. Like, he won't. He does his own thing. I go right. I go right. I was so excited about Druid because of Diablo 2. He was my favorite, and I was so disappointed. He played so bad, and I don't know what they're gonna do with the scaling either. Like, the resistance scaling goes up as you level. So like, my wife was a level 11. I was a 20, and we were fighting level 20 enemies, and she was killing them faster than me. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm weaker because I leveled. Like, I think they have some things to figure out and to tweak, but I also think that it was very fun, and everybody's kind of going through Diablo 4 withdrawals because it was a really fun beta, and I think 2.5 million something people got the wolf pup, so they're very successful. I was debating to download Immortal just to play something while I'm waiting.
Listen to me.
Talk me off. Like, you gotta get me off the list.
Listen to me.
Pull me back. I'm gonna jump.
Come back to us, Mike. There's other games you can play. You don't have to play. Yeah. My gosh. It's like you're hallucinating in the desert, and you're getting ready to drink. You're getting ready to drink. It's like, oh, this puddle of camel piss will taste so good. No, no, you're not that thirsty. We can make it, right? We can make it to, we can make it to the oasis. We can make it. The summer is really going to be very, very big. Yeah, you can check out Last Epoch. Yeah, everybody's been bragging about and singing the praises of Last Epoch. So check that one out.
On Game Pass? No? Oh, I'm sorry. I can't play it then.
We're gonna end the show on that. I can't believe this might be Mike's last week on the show.
See you later, guys.
Grand opening, grand closing. Guys, do me a favor. Make sure you're plugged in my Discord. Make sure you're plugged in on Twitter. Follow me at Reforge Gaming. You can also follow and watch on Kick. Everybody watching on Kick, thank you so much for your support today and all the love and everything else. I am going to put a link in the YouTube chat. Those of you watching on Kick, head over to YouTube, Reforge Gaming. I've got a video premiering. I am really disappointed in Naughty Dog's blog. I thought it was going to be much better than it was. I kind of take him to task. You can call me a Sony pony all you want. I get the bat out. I'm like, this is pretty disappointing. I do not appreciate what happened with The Last of Us on PC. And make sure you're in the Discord or following on Twitter tonight if you want to watch me on the Crossfire podcast or you want to hang out with my wife and I tonight in members. Member stream will be a little bit later because of the Crossfire podcast. This is a really good reason to be in the Discord. So please smash like on your way out. You're heading over to a new video. You can click the link in chat, or you can ride the redirect. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you over there in the premiere for this Last of Us video.